Monopoly can't refuse. Yes. Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gasman live from New York. And tonight we are going to be doing the 50th anniversary audio commentary for Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. Yes, this has been something I've been thinking about for several weeks now because I have a very interesting history with this film. Before we get started, I'm going to give everybody about 3 minutes to get ready by going to your copies of The Godfather and pressing pause at the beginning of the Paramount logo. And if you're watching on the Blu-ray or on streaming, The Godfather probably has the modern day Paramount logo, just to let you all know. I'm a bit disappointed they don't have the old Gulf and Western logo from the early 70s to open up The Godfather, as I think that would, make this experience a bit more real, fun to do. But But the truth of the matter is, I've seen The Godfather maybe 7 or 8 times in my life. I first saw it in high school, and I remember enjoying it at the time and reveling in the filmmaking quality and just every facet of production that I found impressive, from the editing to the cinematography to the acting. I mean, there wasn't one bad performance. It was amazing, but I also had some weird reactions as well, which of course I will talk about tonight. But and I was able to listen to the majority of Mario Puzo's novel before coming into this commentary tonight. Not entirely, I didn't quite finish it, but and at the same time, of course, I'll probably be doing The Godfather Part 2 in a couple of years. So mark your calendars for that eventually. But I thought, I don't have to go full blown Dune on this thing. So I didn't get to finish the book, although what I read from the book was absolutely substantial, and I will share with you all that tonight. But I've only seen it about 6 or 7 times since high school, and every time I watch it, I see something. I notice things. It just gets better and better and richer on every viewing. But it's not a movie that I choose to get out every year to watch, but rather every 3, 4 years. It's not a personal favorite. And here again, we'll talk about this film's history and impact as we get started here. And I think without further ado, I think we should get started. It's 9:03 p.m. It's 177 minutes, which means we're going to press play now, and we will be done at midnight on Eastern Standard Time. Uh, so we will count down from three, two, one, and play. And the stars are coming down from the sky for the modern day Paramount logo. The Godfather was originally released on March 14th, 1972, opening up at the Loews Theater in New York City. And despite the fact it had a very rough production, which we will talk about in detail tonight, a very rough production to say the least, it had an immediate impact with the public and with the media and with moviegoers. Just fell in love with this movie. I mean, Francis Ford Coppola said that after the first cut, Mario Puzo's The Godfather. It should be noted that Coppola actually fought the studio to have Mario Puzo's name over The Godfather because his script was so close to the novel, although he did leave things out and left them in the novel. But it was so faithful that he just couldn't imagine the author's name not being above the title, and eventually he won. despite many disagreements between Coppola and Paramount during production. Now, I love this opening because it starts out from the Godfather's point of view. We're slowly pulling back from this gentleman that's telling this horrific story about something that happened to his family member. That she got attacked and raped, and the kids went on trial, and they got a suspended sentence or whatever, and he's looking for justice. He's looking for somebody to give him proper justice, and he meets with the Godfather at a wedding of all places, which is very unusual. But at the same time, this is how it works. The Godfather, played by Marlon Brando, who we will see here in a minute, Don Corleone. I'm probably going to mess up a lot of the Italian names, so just forgive me. I'm not. I know. I mean, I'm probably going to mess up a lot of stuff during this commentary, but at the same time, I'm going to try to. I didn't intend to talk during every scene, but we'll just keep moving from here. But this is a great opening monologue that sets everything in motion. Here again, completely from Marlon Brando's point of view. There he is, right there in silhouette on the left, and he's just listening to everything this man is saying, taking everything in, thinking about it. Should he help him or should he not help him? I should have turned on my subtitles here. Okay. This movie has become so iconic. I mean, there's just scenes in this movie that are, almost best left watching quietly because, oh God, there he is. Marlon Brando in one of the most iconic roles of all time, The Godfather. Brando had been acting for 20 years on screen before this movie. I mean, he started out in 1950 in The Men, but the real big break for him was, of course, A Streetcar Named Desire, which had Vivian Leigh in her second Oscar-winning performance based on the Tennessee Williams play. And I think there was a lot of outcry as to why. I mean, because Brando was a famous method actor in the 50s, and I think there was a large outcry as to why he wasn't nominated along with Carl Malden and Vivian Leigh. I mean, even at that young of an age and early a career, he exploded, basically the moment he appeared on screen. I remember watching the movie where he plays a motorcycle gang leader in The Wild One, which is a great little 79-minute flick where this motorcycle gang takes over this small town. Um, but in the 1960s, Brando's career had actually been in decline. He had appeared in like like the bloated remake of Mutiny on the Bounty. He had done these big budget films that were flops, and his career was basically stalled at this point. Now, now we see some other members of the family here. We have Robert Duvall, who we just saw walking off to the right, and James Caan, who was standing next to the Godfather there. And I love this. He explains to him that if you had come in friendship, and if we had like a if you had invited me over for a cup of coffee, and if we had actually gotten to know each other, this would have been a bit more easier. And what strikes me about I mean, the first time I saw this movie, I got to admit, I was dubious, because this is the mafia, this is a criminal enterprise, and you have to put yourself in this position of absorbing yourself in this family. How much of their actions, um what are your reactions to their actions? I mean, because I mean, they go out and kill people, and they go out and do dirty things to people, but like he says right here, we're not murderers, and that's a perfect way to end the scene. Give this to Clemenza. I want people I want people that aren't going to get carried away. We're not murderers, in spite of what this Undertaker says. So, I mean, look, in many ways, what I realized after several viewings of this is it's that, and I realized this even after watching the Francis Ford Coppola audio commentary on the Blu-rays, is that we kind of need a godfather for situations like this when justice hasn't been served. This guy, he went to the police, he did everything he was supposed to do, and he just got screwed over by the government, and during in trying to get justice for this young woman, and it's like he just got shafted. I mean, what are you going to do? So he goes to the Godfather, who will make something happen. So in in many ways, it almost makes an argument that the Godfather needs to exist. It's like this force that has to exist, that for certain people to go and get favors for. You know, my parents went to see this movie when it came out in March of 1972, and the general reaction that I got from them is kind of ironic, in that my father did not like the movie. He did not like how it glamorized the mafia. That being said, my mother was actually a bit more open to it and liked it a lot more, citing that, well, it's a movie about a family, even more so than what exactly they do for a living. And I found that a difference very, very interesting. That she was the one that actually enjoyed it a lot more than he did. But I mean, when I first saw it in high school, my reaction was just how absorbed I was in terms of the storytelling. I mean, going beyond, I mean, after that first scene, I think I was kind of relaxed a little bit in terms of, um, here again, how it's going to present this mafia family. And I calmed down a bit, and I just let the storytelling do its thing. And I got swept along in this epic story, which, here again, it goes over the course of 10 years, from 1945 to 1955, over the course of 3 hours. Which, by the way, believe it or not, I just read recently that Francis Ford Coppola, his original cut was actually 2 hours and 6 minutes. But it was actually Robert Evans at Paramount, of all people, that insisted that he expand the movie a bit, and made it, and they ballooned the running time up to 177 minutes. But it flows perfectly. I mean, I don't think there's a dull moment in this movie at all. Not one dull moment. I mean, that's a testament to what Puzo and Coppola did here. And like I said, I mean, they were almost constantly fighting with Paramount all throughout production, specifically on the casting choices of Brando and Pacino, which were considered highly controversial at the time. Brando had, of course, his clout had been gone in the previous decade, and Pacino, nobody really knew who he was, and all he did really was Panic in Needle Park. but he had done some very successful stage work. You know, he had won awards. I mean, him and John Cazale, uh, who plays one of the sons in this movie, Frito. They both did a play together in the late 1960s and won awards for that specific play, and they would work together, of course, up until Dog Day Afternoon. Now, okay, we just saw this scene of Jimmy James Caan breaking the camera and then throwing the money down on that. I always get a kick out of that scene. I mean, that's a great scene. I love that moment. And I mean, like I said, even when he walks away and he's so rough with this guy, you know, it's like you can't hate what he did. Like he just gave him some money. Here, buy a new camera. I actually kind of like that. I mean, and that was all improvised by James Caan. In fact, the actor said himself that he, you know, where he came from, you know, if you break something, you pay money to replace it, and that's what he did. That's what he did, and it was all improvised. It's amazing. So that's definitely one of my favorite bits of The Godfather is that moment right here, and right there. And like I said, there's going to be moments all throughout this movie where I don't know if it's inappropriate to laugh, but I can't help but laugh, and not I mean not in a mocking way, but just in terms of certain performances and certain reactions and uh, certain directions this movie takes. I mean, it's not a comedy, and of course, I'm not looking at it as a comedy, and yet there are moments where I can't help but laugh, even if they're meant to be serious. And every viewing has been like that, and you know I like, you know, it's a nice balance. I mean, I don't laugh more than maybe once every half hour, but I'm just saying that there are moments where I laugh when I guess they're supposed to be serious. I mean, I'm sure people would argue that they're supposed to be serious, but you know what? That's fine. It makes the experience all the more enjoyable. And as you can see, this actor is, you know, practicing his speech before meeting the Godfather, and he actually he was actually genuinely nervous during shooting that he flubbed some of his lines in front of Brando, but Coppola liked the fact that he was nervous talking to the Godfather, so he just left it in as is. I think a lot of people would be intimidated talking to him, even after watching that first scene. I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, how? Okay, let me ask you this: how many? After watching this movie for the first time, how many of you would like to meet the Godfather in person? Just think about that for a moment. Let me say hi to some people in the chat. Cliff Booth, how you doing? One of my top 10 favorites. Looking forward to the commentary. Yes, we're already started here. And I'll just go ahead and give a timestamp. We are at 15 minutes. Jump to 15 minutes, everybody, if you haven't jumped in yet. And that's where we are, where Al Pacino has just come to the wedding and talking to Diane Keaton. Also, like to say hi to Ben Grimm. I've never watched this movie, just not into mob movies. No, Ben, I completely empathize with you. I'm not really a fan of mob movies either. Now, I have my fair share of favorites, and throughout the commentary, I was going to talk about the gangster genre in general, and how I've always had a difficult time accepting it, but at the same time, I do have some favorites I'd like to talk about. And finally, I'd also like to say hi to Rob Gasper. Wow, the rare time the suits contributed a good idea. Yes, well, look, I can understand some of Paramount's decisions here. I mean, you know, they're dealing with a very, very young director. They're putting their faith in this guy who, you know, really only made a couple movies before then, including The Rain People in 1969 with Robert Duvall. And because of the fact that they liked some of the performances in that movie, they hired Francis Ford Coppola, and also because of the Italianness of the name, you know, thought it would be a good fit for the movie, and of course it was. So, Lenny Montana Luca was a legit enforcer for the Colombo crime family. Oh, damn. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I know that there was that's the interesting thing is that there initially there were protests from at least one crime family. I mean, there were letters written and everything, and when they met with some of them, and they had to replace certain names, showcasing like the different levels of the mafia or whatever. When they changed them because they thought, well, it's not going to hurt the story anymore. Um, we'll get rid of those. And then they were satisfied with that. And then after that, the letters ceased. And after that, there wasn't really an issue with the mob after that. I mean, it was pretty much dead and gone at that point. So I think, like I said, it took a few weeks, but I think they ultimately got the mob's approval. Definitely good point. Yes, yes, absolutely. Now, do I think this movie is too long? No. No, I mean, I actually no, I actually think that every scene is important. I think every scene contributes to the story. I don't think there's anything here that's necessarily unnecessary, or that this film was edited by two old school Hollywood editors, William Reynolds and Peter Zinner, and I'm actually a particular fan of Peter Zinner because he did An Officer and a Gentleman, which is one of my favorite movies. But trying to remember, he won an Oscar for, trying to remember what it was. Can't remember everything I've looked at, but I mean, some things I just have to look up. He won an Oscar for The Deer Hunter. Yeah, he won the Oscar for that, and the BAFTA and the Ace Eddie Award for Best Edited Feature Film. And he was nominated for an Oscar here for The Godfather as well, with William Reynolds. And William Reynolds, he had done The Sound of Music, The Sting, The Turning Point, The Day the Earth Stood Still. He directed edited some great films as well. But I wanted to shout out to the editors, because editing is the most important process, I think, in filmmaking. And I say that because it could make or break a movie at the box office, period. And the perfect example of that is Star Wars, which is a movie that was essentially saved in editing by George Lucas's own wife. And yes, George Lucas did help Francis Ford Coppola on The Godfather for certain bits and certain sequences. I will point them out when I come to them. I mean, they attended USC together with Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg had nothing to do with The Godfather, by the way, but George Lucas, in fact, was around and did help out, and did in fact help out Coppola. But yeah, going back to the editing real quick. Yeah, so I mean, we got two, absolutely top editors, and basically what they did when they edited The Godfather, William Reynolds started with the first half, and Peter Zinner had the second half, and they basically joined together like a railroad. That's exactly how Francis Ford Coppola describes it in his audio commentary on the Blu-ray. So so here we have a very, very young Al Pacino. Now, like I said, he had done some significant stage work, but a lot of people seem to forget that for the first 5 or 6 years, I mean, like say from like 17 to 25 years old, he was basically homeless and hungry and working his ass off in the theater. He was, I mean, think of Midnight Cowboy. That's how Al Pacino was living. That's not a joke. Uh, he was at the bottom, literally at the bottom, during his first few years when he was working in the theater. And it wasn't until 1968 when he did a play called the Indian. The Indian Wants the Bronx, which is a one-act play by Israel Horovitz. Gupta, the Indian of the title, has just arrived in New York City from his native country to visit his son and speaks only a few words of English. While waiting for a bus to the Bronx, he is approached by two young punks, Joey and Murph, who begin teasing him. Name-calling taunts eventually result in acts of rage and violence. The play premiered in 1966 at the Eugene O'Neill Theater in Waterford, Connecticut. Al Pacino and John Cazale starred, and it was the first of 6 collaborations between them. Cazale was cast after the original actor, an Indian, was judged not to be able to handle the role. Horovitz later wrote on the subject, "True John's Italian, not Hindu, from Winchester, Massachusetts, not Delhi, but it's also true that John Cazale is a fine, sensitive actor," unquote. So he had done that play, and in fact, he went over to Italy for the very first time and did this play in Italy. He had never been to Italy before, so sort of like the character of Michael Corleone, he would go to Italy at a weird point in his life doing this play. And the other play that he did, and by the way, that play I just talked about, the Indian, um, uh, like I said, he and John Cazale both won awards for that. And then in 1969, Al Pacino did another play called "Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie?" And the story is a racially charged drama about teen drug addicts at a rehabilitation center located on an island in a river bordering a large industrial city. An English teacher tries to make a difference in his students' lives. He encounters barriers in trying to do this, the same barriers created by the system that hinders the addict's development and keeps them coming back. One addict, Bickham, is a tough teenager who searched for his father and found him working in a seedy barbershop. Upon meeting his son, the barber shows him a dirty photograph. Contrasting Bickham is Conrad, an African American addict. Conrad wants to recover and marries his love, Linda. During the play, his character leaves the rehabilitation group to live with his sister, who is also an addict. Aside from the students, there are only 4 characters in the rehabilitation center: a teacher, a psychiatrist, a policeman, and the center's principal. And the impact of this play was that it portrays addicts as the victims of loveless upbringings. They fail in isolation or find strength in love. The play, however, was characterized as more of a documentary about the lives of addicts and our rehabilitation system. It does not provide morality or solutions. It leaves judgment to the audience. So that was where Al Pacino came from. And then, like I said, in 1969, he would make his film debut in Me, Natalie with Patty Duke. And in 1971, he made a movie called the Panic in Needle Park, which was about heroin addicts in Needle Park. And that was the movie that got the attention of Francis Ford Coppola to cast him in The Godfather. But Paramount was like, no. You know, they wanted, of course, somebody like Robert Redford, or they didn't want Al Pacino. I mean, you know, nobody had really heard of Al Pacino in Hollywood at that point. And despite the fact he had won significant awards for these 2 plays, and doing this one movie about starring as a heroin addict, obviously they just they did not want to deal with Al Pacino. I mean, I guess for some reason, I don't know what their deal was, but I guess he was just too unknown of an actor. Now, Robert Duvall, on the other hand, you know, he had started out in the early '60s when he played in To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, the earliest thing I think I saw Robert Duvall in, though, was there was a series that came out in the early '60s called Route 66 about these 2 guys that drive on old Route 66. It was a travelogue series, and they would have different adventures in these different towns that they would stop at. And they stop in one town where Robert Duvall plays an addict, and it's a powerful performance. And I remember when I saw that, I was thinking, wow, I bet when people saw this, of course, nobody knew who Robert Duvall was at that time, and of course, he became one of our greatest screen actors. And man, I love so many things that Robert Duvall was in, but probably my favorite Robert Duvall movie is, oddly enough, Falling Down, starring Michael Douglas, where Michael Douglas plays a guy in the heat of the day. He leaves his car in traffic and he decides to go home on this increasingly violent odyssey through LA. And Robert Duvall plays a cop that's on his last day before retirement, and basically he has to sniff Michael Douglas out of what exactly is he doing. And but Robert Duvall has done so many things for stage and the screen, and he has you know he he's consistently working. In fact, um, Robert Duvall is still with us. He's 91 years old. And this I found particularly interesting. His next movie will be released on Netflix on June 10th, 2022, and it's called Hustle. And the film stars Adam Sandler as a former basketball scout who tries to revive his career by recruiting a player with a checkered past from overseas to play in the NBA. The film stars Adam Sandler, Queen Latifah, Ben Foster, and Robert Duvall. And Adam Sandler co-produced this movie with LeBron James. So that is what Robert Duvall is going to be in 2022. The man just turned 91 years old, so he's still with us. And Al Pacino is going to be turning 82 in July, I believe. So they're both. In fact, even the producer of The Godfather is still with us, Albert S. Ruddy. He's still with us. And I got to admit, when I read about Albert S. Ruddy, I was completely blown away. But he his first movie he produced was called Wild Seed in 1965, where he was actually hired by Marlon Brando's production company, and in fact he co-produced that film with Marlon Brando Sr. And then he created the no, seriously, the producer of The Godfather. Not only did he make that movie Wild Seed, with Marlon Brando's father, he also created or co-created Hogan's Heroes, which is the CBS sitcom which ran from 1965 to 1971. I wonder what the I just wonder what the media's reaction to that was. Wait a minute, the guy behind Hogan's Heroes produced The Godfather? Yeah. Yeah. It's like the last series in the world that you would expect, really. And in 1970, he produced two films for The Godfather. He did two comedies, Little Faust and Big Hazy, about two motorcycle racers, and Making It, a sexually triumphant high school student who beds the gerontophobic wife of his gym teacher. So that's the producer Albert S. Ruddy for you. Uh, Later on, he would produce both the Cannonball Run films. And in fact, real quick, I have to say real quick that Burt Reynolds originally was considered for the role of Michael Corleone among many other actors. But Brando categorically refused to do the movie if Burt Reynolds was going to play Michael. He said absolutely not. So Burt was like, okay, okay, whatever, man. So yeah, Albert S. Ruddy, the producer of The Godfather, he would also produce all three Cannonball Run films. Yes, including the third film called Speed Zone, Ladybugs with Rodney Dangerfield, Which look, I am a Rodney fan. I don't like ladybugs. I saw it on my 13th birthday, and I never thought in a million years I would imagine that the producer of Ladybugs was also behind The Godfather. Never would have imagined it. And he also won a second Academy Award for producing Million Dollar Baby for Clint Eastwood in 2004, and he's still producing. In fact, he produced Eastwood's movie Cry Macho from last year in 2021, and it looks like he's going to be an executive producer of a Cannonball Run remake. So the man is 92 now. He can do whatever he wants. So there you go. I mean, oh, excuse me, 91. He turns 92 on March 28th because he was born in 1930. Oh, so there you go. So what do you all think of Albert S. Ruddy as the producer of The Godfather? I mean, that is the most insane resume I've ever read in my life. Man. Uh, right on. Always glad to see Duvall still in the game. Yes. Yeah. I mean, including a basketball game. I mean, why not? As video proof from a few weeks ago proves, Al Pacino is not only still with us, he's dancing around the streets of Beverly Hills, listening to music while on his daily walk. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, of course, Al Pacino is still with us as well. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Coppola is still with us. Pacino's still with us. Khan is still with us. Talia Shire. Wait a minute. Am I wrong on that? Please I need to double check that. Okay, yes, Talia Shire's still with us. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody except Brando, pretty much most of the main cast is still with us aside from Marlon Brando. That is amazing. What? Yeah, I can imagine that's the reaction to. Okay, now this is the famous horse head scene. Now, in the book, it's a little bit different because I think like the horse head is like on the head post or whatever. But Coppola thought it would be much more scary and interesting if they actually put it in the bed. Now that is a real horse head. That is not a fake horse head. That is 100% real. They did not kill a horse. They did not do that. They went to a dog food company. Now, this is one of those reactions from Brando that just cracks me up. It's like, yeah. So anyway, Brando's great, but I mean, like I said, just something like this, like, eh. Well, anyway, back to the horse head story. They went to this dog food company and they pre-selected a horse that was, um, that was going to be slaughtered eventually, to use for the food. And they said, look, I mean, when you slaughter this horse, please give us the head. And that's what they did. They gave him the head. And that is what you see. But Coppola's reasoning behind changing the scene from the novel was he thought that it would be a lot more intense if he actually wakes up with blood all over him, thinking that it may be his blood and terrified. And then the reveal when he takes off the sheet, which Coppola is not 100% convinced it's more intense or even better, but I dig it. I think it was a great way to expose all that. Now, this is, of course, all the mid 1940s. Ruddy said he got the Godfather job because Little Foss and Big Halsey came in on time and on budget. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, all you need is prove yourself on one film, and then they'll entrust you with something that has a lot more potential, and that's but of course, like I said, Coppola, Ruddy, everybody else that worked on The Godfather, they had no idea that this was going to become the pop culture phenomenon that it's become. They didn't have a clue. I mean, and like I said, there was so much tension during production, particularly between the studio and Coppola, that it, it just wasn't. It was on nobody's minds. They were hoping it did well, but you never know. I mean, Paramount was concerned from the very beginning with Brando because he felt that he mumbled. Um, but I think according to Coppola's words, that the studio got a bit confused in the fact that Brando was supposed to be playing somebody much older. I mean, Brando was in his late 40s, I believe, at this time, and obviously he's supposed to be playing somebody who is much older, and obviously um, that was Coppola's reasoning behind the whole thing as to why they were so against Brando. But it's insane because I mean, when they were casting, they asked each other, they all asked each other, well, who is our greatest actor living today? And it basically boiled down to two people: Laurence Olivier and Marlon Brando. And Laurence Olivier was British, and they did try to contact Olivier's agent, but apparently his agent said that he was sick. Although there's people question that if that was just an excuse not to do it, because that year he would do a great film, by the way, with Joseph L. Mankiewicz called Sleuth, which is a great film in its own right. I'll be doing a commentary on that later this year. Yes, that's absolutely right. The studio wanted it to be a contemporary movie. That's absolutely right. Puzo apparently was just so enthusiastic that somebody was making a movie about based on his book, that he was actually okay with a 1970s contemporary setting. But Coppola was like, Mario, no, we no, we shouldn't do that. No, we should keep it in the 1940s. And the attention to detail. I mean, look, I have been a fan of period pictures for as long as I can remember, because as I've said a million times, and I will say a million more, the reason why I fell in love with movies in the first place is because it's really the only way that we could time travel. It's really the only possible way that we could time travel. They got the 1940s right, and one of the things I read over at IMDb is that a lot of the bumpers were wooden in this movie because to support the war effort, they would take out the chrome bumpers and would turn them in to support the war effort, and they put on wooden bumpers to replace them. And it took a few years for it to go back to normal. But that's just an example of the devotion to period detail that The Godfather has. And like I said, I mean, that alone was enough for me to say, okay, yeah, this is one of the greatest movies ever made. Because I do love my period pictures. I mean, I love going back in time to whether it might be settings like Braveheart or uh, and this used to be a real department store, Best and Company, no longer with us. But now I haven't talked about Diane Keaton yet. Now, this was the very first scene shot for The Godfather, was Al Pacino and Diane Keaton coming out of Best and Company in New York City when it actually still existed at that time. But that was the very first scene shot. Diane Keaton at this time was actually working with Woody Allen and actually had a relationship with Woody Allen at this time. And she did a movie with him the same year as The Godfather called Play It Again, Sam, based on Woody Allen's own play. And I decided not to do a commentary for Play It Again, Sam, this year. However, I will be doing Woody Allen's film, Everything You Always Want to Know About Sex, But Were Afraid to Ask. And I can't help it only because of the fact that Gene Wilder falls in love with a sheep. Gene Wilder has an affair with a sheep. For that sequence alone, I have to do a commentary on that movie. So, and yes, we will be talking about Woody Allen at that point, but we'll leave that live. We'll let that lie for now. But yeah, Diane Keaton was working with Woody Allen, and she would work with him all the way up until Annie Hall in 1977, which got her the Oscar for Best Actress. And she personally approved of Al Pacino to play Michael Corleone, and Coppola was so happy to have gotten her approval for Pacino for the role, because it really, really aided in support and fighting the studio. Excuse me. Yep, the whole scene at Dempsey's is so period perfect. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Wilder's long pause in that movie as well. Yes! Oh my God. Yes. Cliff, thank you. Yeah, I mean that's probably the funniest thing in the whole movie. It's when the guy who brings the sheep to Gene Wilder in the movie, he just says, I'm in love with a sheep," and Gene Wilder says, "I beg your pardon, I'm in love with a sheep," and Gene Wilder takes forever in responding, and it I think it was all improvisation. I'm pretty certain it was. It was so brilliant, so funny. It's amazing. I'm looking forward to that. I'm definitely looking forward to doing that movie. But like I said, no more talk about Woody Allen until then. No more talk about Woody until then. Yeah, this is a pretty this is a pretty intense death right here. See here again. No, I'm not like mocking the movie with my laughter. I just can't help but laugh. Oh, yeah. Let me do a timestamp real quick. Let's see. We are at 44 minutes and 20 seconds. 44 minutes and 20 seconds for anybody who wants to jump in. Uh, just one moment. Sorry. Okay. Now, forgive me for that long pause. Okay, so here the Godfather is going to get gunned down, and of course, this is something that's going to haunt Frito for the rest of this movie, and certainly into Godfather 2. Oh man, this is a pretty powerful death here. Brando nails it, just nails it. The king has collapsed. Oh my God. Now, like I said, this is John Cazale right here, who, man, died way too young. Oh, so young. And he was in 5 movies in the 70s that got Best Picture. I think he was not. I think he was in 5 nominated films and 3 won, and they included The Godfather, The Godfather 2, and The Deer Hunter. But he was also, of course, in Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino, which is my favorite Al Pacino movie. I mean, Dog Day Afternoon is hands down my favorite. He plays a loser who needs to raise money for his lover's sex change operation, and so he robs a bank. It's based on a true story. It's an incredible true story. It got an Oscar for the script. And Al Pacino and John Cazale are just on fire throughout that whole movie. I mean, Dog Day Afternoon is one of the absolute best of the 70s. And Pacino was so exhausted after that movie, he had to take a break for 3 years. I mean, and to be fair, he had just done, Godfather 1 and Godfather 2. And then, of course, Dog Day Afternoon, he was so exhausted. He's like, no, I have to take a break. I have to take a break. This is too much now. But and yeah, and he wouldn't appear until 1978 in Bobby Deerfield. In the book, the family kind of dismisses Diane Keaton's character, calling her a hag, and you know, of course, as in the book, I mean, the Godfather is convinced that his youngest son Michael should be the one to take over the family business, but of course, he doesn't have much interest in the family business until his father is gunned down. That is the turning point for his character, and like I said, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, Al Pacino's arc in this movie is I think, one of the most powerful things that makes this movie work and makes us start walking beside him on this journey. Uh, as he goes from somebody who has no interest in the family business to, of course, being the new Godfather, the new Don, or you know. And look, forgive me, I'm not a mafia expert. And like honestly, I wasn't trying to delve deep into that area. Forgive me, but at the same time, I did already talk about the historical details in terms of, it only took one meeting for them to say, okay, just take out a word here, take out a word there. And then the mafia was fine with the movie, and then there was no other complaints. But to talk about the movie in terms of awards, 45th Academy Awards, which took place on March 27th, 1973. Several weeks ago, I did a audio commentary for Bob Fosse's Cabaret, which is available for you to listen to, and I highly recommend you all do check out Cabaret if you haven't watched it yet. But it's a brilliant musical by Bob Fosse, and that was actually the Oscar champion for 1972, even though The Godfather won Best Picture. Cabaret got 8 Oscars, and in fact, in a stunning upset, Bob Fosse actually won Best Director over Francis Ford Coppola. But look, Coppola won Best Director for Godfather 2, so relax, it's okay. And look, I'm glad Bob Fosse won for Cabaret because I mean his direction in that movie is phenomenal, phenomenal. I mean, not to take anything away from Coppola as a director of The Godfather whatsoever. I'm just saying, Fosse's direction was phenomenal, and I've absolutely no issue with him winning Best Director over Coppola because, like I said, Coppola would win for Godfather 2 anyway. But interestingly enough, excuse me, Al Pacino and Marlon Brando both boycotted the Academy Awards for entirely different reasons. This is probably my favorite trivia bit when it comes to The Godfather. And look, I have to talk about it in detail. But The Godfather is nominated for 11 Academy Awards, and it was the #1 box office hit of 1972. Made on a budget of $7 million, a very modest budget. I mean, like I said, Coppola notes in his commentary that a lot of the second unit stuff is so dated and low budget, and he's almost embarrassed by them. Godfather 2 has none of that. But The Godfather was nominated for 11 Oscars and would ultimately win only 3. It would win Best Picture for Albert S. Ruddy, and it would also win for Marlon Brando for Best Actor, although Brando refused to attend the ceremony, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And also, The Godfather also won Best Screenplay based on material from another medium to Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo for, of course, his novel. And that was actually the one instance where, aside from Best Picture, The Godfather won over Cabaret, because Cabaret actually swept the awards with 8, and The Godfather only got 3. Now, Al Pacino was livid because he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and he thinks he should have been nominated for Best Actor because he has more screen time than Marlon Brando. I actually do agree with Pacino there, and I don't blame him for being upset. But according to Academy logic, that they considered Marlon Brando to be the lead actor because he was top billed. Al Pacino, his character really doesn't come into play really until Brando is gunned down. So, and granted, I mean, and of course we don't follow Pacino all throughout the movie, but he does. But he is a dominant character in the second and third hours. And no, I do think Pacino has a point, and I don't blame him. And like I said, a lot of people think he should have won Best Actor for Godfather 2, and that was an extremely stunning upset because he lost to Art Carney for Harry and Tonto, the heartwarming story about an old man and his cat. Now, look, it's a lovely little movie. There's no reason to get upset with it. But look, yeah, why Al Pacino didn't win for Godfather 2, I have no clue. And so I don't blame Pacino. And he ultimately would not win until 1992's Scent of a Woman, directed by Martin Brest and co-starring Chris O'Donnell. Little overdue. But like I said, I would have given it to him for Dog Day Afternoon, personally. But Brando was an entirely different story. I mean, you thought Pacino had reasons to boycott the Oscars. Oh, wait a minute. Now, if you've never seen the footage of Brando refusing to accept his award at the Academy Award ceremony, it is priceless. Okay, so basically, Brando boycotted The Godfather winning Best Actor because, or rather just winning anything, because of the fact that he was upset with the mistreatment of Native Americans on stage or screen. Of course, in the 30s and 40s, I mean, of course, we had, those horrible stereotypes with regards to African American actors and Native American actors, being portrayed as bug-eyed darkies and Injun Joes who would, go out and rape white women. It took a long time for Hollywood to shed that, and that is the reason why Marlon Brando opted to boycott the awards. And, he just refused to do it. So he sent a representative called, her name was Sacheen Littlefeather. And he supposedly wrote out this speech that she couldn't read in front of the microphone because of time constraints, but she basically explained to the Academy Award audience that Brando cannot accept the award due to the horrible treatment of Native Americans on stage or screen. There were some audience members that were furious. There were other audience members that applauded her for her bravery to actually go up on stage and say what she had to say. And from what I understand, it's more than just a rumor. But John Wayne was off stage, and of course we know now, of course, about Wayne's infamous racism. He was being held back because he essentially wanted to tackle Sasheen Littlefeather off the stage. With that knowledge, I applaud her even more. Okay, now look, I'll be perfectly honest with all of you, is that I haven't really given a shit about the Oscars for at least 5 or 6 years now. Okay, pause right there for a moment, because I love this moment right here. This is a beautiful scene with the Statue of Liberty in the background, and this line, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli," ad-libbed. It was totally ad-libbed. And that became one of the most famous lines from this movie, along with "I'll give him an offer he can't refuse." Yes. So but anyway, going back to the controversy with the Oscars. So yeah, that's what Brando did. So he categorically refused to accept the Academy Award, which was very controversial, obviously because of the stunt that he pulled. Now, what is also true is that during production of The Godfather, that he would play practical jokes. In fact, the highest rated trivia item on IMDb, which made me laugh out loud, was apparently when the scene where they're bringing Don Corleone home. Apparently, Brando had intentionally put rocks or heavy objects underneath the underneath, so that it would be a lot more heavier for the actors to carry him. That's hilarious. that is hilarious. So, but at any rate, that's essentially the whole Oscar story. I mean, like I said, Cabaret would win 8 Oscars. The Godfather would win 3. The only other ones that would win Oscars would be Eileen Heckart won for Butterflies Are Free for Best Supporting Actress. Best Screenplay based on factual material or material not previously produced or published went to The Candidate. It went to Jeremy Larneder for the political satire The Candidate, starring Robert Redford. Best Foreign Language Film went to The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, which is a French film. Best Documentary went to Marjo. Best Animated Short Subject was A Christmas Carol. Best Original Song went to The Poseidon Adventure for The Morning After. Best Costume Design was Travels with My Aunt, which is a British film probably nobody has ever heard of, but that won over The Godfather, believe it or not. And then finally, last but not least, a movie from 1952, written and directed by Charles Chaplin, won Best Original Dramatic Score. And that's very interesting because Chaplin was kicked out of the United States when he was suspected of being a a communist by the FBI, and he wasn't allowed back into the country until 1972. And it was at that Oscar ceremony when The Godfather won Best Picture that Chaplin had first appeared on the stage after 20 years of being exiled from America and living in Switzerland. They showed some clips of Chaplin's movies, and when he appeared on stage, the audience had a 10-minute standing ovation for this comedy legend. Um, and yeah, it was amazing. I mean, he won, and he actually won an Academy Award that night for a film that he made 20 years before. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Is it? I mean, all right. Let's see. The slow close up of Michael during the plot to kill the captain is the moment. Yes, so amazing. Oh my God. Yes. Hey Jamie, how you doing tonight? Glad you could show up. Let me give everybody a timestamp. We are at the 1 hour and 2 minute mark and 30 seconds. 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds. So go ahead and jump there. That's where we are at with The Godfather. We got a bit of time to get through here. I mean, like I said, it's a long movie, but it's not an overlong movie. Now, Al Pacino and Marlon Brando, they really only have a couple of scenes together in this movie. Pacino noted that in this scene, when he's talking to Brando in the hospital bed, that Brando actually exhibited real, genuine tears. And the scene before Marlon Brando ultimately dies, which is later on, where they have this dialogue between each other. That scene was actually written by Robert Towne, an uncredited Robert Towne, who also wrote Chinatown and The Last Detail. One of the most prolific screenwriters of Hollywood in the 1970s. Because they figured, well, wait a minute. I mean, we got the two stars in this movie. Don't they ever share a scene? And like, yeah, I mean, the hospital scene is almost nothing, but the scene later, where the Godfather warns him about, I mean, you know, the first person to come to you with a deal is going to be the first one that's guilty. You know, just remember that. And he has that knowledge going in to what he has to be, and he'll be more prepared in that regard. Yeah, you know, I probably should. I probably should do a video about my Blu-ray collection because I am very proud of it. I am absolutely proud of my DVD and Blu-ray collection. It's just, you know, I haven't gone the 4K route yet. To be perfectly honest, I just part of it is because I just can't afford it, and just because I'm perfectly happy with DVD and Blu-ray that I just don't see the need to add another to that. And you know, I'm perfectly fine with all the Blu-rays that I have. You know, perfectly fine. I don't need to make that upgrade, at least not right now. But yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind, Jamie, about doing a an entire video about my Blu-ray collection, or maybe a series of videos. Even I don't know, but just lie here, Pop. I'll take care of you now. Yeah. Yep. The yeah. According to Pacino, those are real tears coming out of Brando's eyes. Now, it's interesting because before I saw the Godfather films, what I knew Marlon Brando from was, of course, he played Jor-El's father in Superman, the Richard Donner film from 1978. And that, of course, the Salkinds, the producers behind the Superman series, they actually went to Mario Puzo based on his work from The Godfather to write the script for Superman. And Puzo actually read some comic books, and he actually took some notes on like General Zod and some other characters, and wrote this epic script. I mean, wrote this, this Godfather-esque script where, it has, obvious religious parallels. I mean, Marlon Brando is Superman's father, sending his son to planet Earth and everything. I mean, just very obvious religious symbolism, which of course Zack Snyder would masturbate over in Man of Steel, when in 1978 in the Richard Donner film was a lot more subtle. But along with The Godfather and Superman, Marlon Brando was notorious for basically having cue cards on the set with his lines, because he wanted to get the most natural reaction from like the first take. Which I guess that was just his acting way of doing things. And there's a great story where Ilya Salkind, the executive producer of Superman, and Richard Donner, the director, who we just lost, rest in peace. Oh, okay, yes, this is the scene of that Rob Gasper was talking about during the plot to kill the moment, right? Or maybe not. I don't know. I shouldn't have screwed up there. Oh man, sorry. But yeah, Ilya Salkind and Richard Donner had gone to see Marlon Brando prior to shooting Superman, and they were asking him how he was going to approach the role of Jor-El. And he was thinking, well, you know what? I was thinking the other day, I should play this role like a bagel. What? Donner was like, what are you talking about? And Ilya Salkind just said, next to Richard Donner, was like, oh, we're fucked. It was like, no, but I, when they finally asked him, Brando was like, well, look, I mean, how are we supposed to know what Krypton looks like? How are we supposed to know what my character is supposed to look like on this planet, a gazillion light years away? So that's why I'm playing it as a bagel. It doesn't necessarily have to be an edible bagel. It could be a mechanical bagel. It could be anything. And that's why and they finally got what he was trying to do. But yeah, if you look throughout the Godfather and Superman, in Marlon Brando scenes, he's constantly looking at other places at cue cards. Yeah, I mean, but look, he was a brilliant actor. I mean, he just did things the way he was comfortable, the way he was doing things. Oh, and by the way, when he did Superman, He got an unprecedented salary of like $3.7 million or something like that. And of course, the Salkinds, they would cut out all of Marlon Brando's footage for Superman 2. And that's the thing. I like Superman 2, but I always felt like it could have been The Godfather Part 2, like it was here. I always felt that way. And it was, unfortunately, it was compromised because Richard Donner being fired, and Richard Lester shooting new scenes to get 51% for the directorial credit. It just, yeah, God, that was a mess of a production, a total mess of a production. Oh, cool, Jamie. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. I mean, I probably just won't go down that road. I hate to say it, but I just won't. Unless somebody wants to buy me a 4K player and movies for my birthday. My birthday's in April. If anybody wants to help me upgrade to 4K, otherwise, no. Yeah, I'll be turning 43 on April 4th. Yeah, might as well throw that out there now. I'll be turning 43 years old on April 4th. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe The Godfather came out 7 years before I was born. It's like I was almost there. I was almost there in '72 to see The Godfather on the big screen. Well, and actually, they have re-released the Godfather for its 50th anniversary on the big screen. I'm sure it's still playing at certain places for you to go see it. But it's interesting because I mean, while I love the period detail of The Godfather, I feel like when I see movies on the big screen, there has to be a reason for it, and like Lawrence of Arabia, that's a movie that needs to be seen on the big screen or experienced on the big screen as a first time watch. I mean, if I had never seen The Godfather before this year, I probably would have gone out to see it in the theater. Believe it or not. But of course, I watch a lot of movies, so of course I did see The Godfather. I mean, I saw it in high school. And Al Pacino's performance is amazing. I mean, considering how young he is, and considering everything he went through just to get to this point. I mean, man, he's just nailing this dialogue, and we can see how his character is changing very, very slowly. It's blossoming, it's blooming. It just it blows me away. I mean, every time I see Al Pacino in this movie, it blows me away how good he is. But here again, my personal favorite is Dog Day Afternoon, and I will not stand down from that one. And I'll kill them both. Yeah. Hmm. Now, James Caan, I don't think we've talked a lot about James Caan yet. Um, I like James Caan in other movies that he's done, like Misery and Thief, the Michael Mann film from 1981. Unfortunately, I must say that I have firsthand reports of from a friend of mine who worked on a movie that had James Caan in it that apparently would touch her hair inappropriately every time he came close to her. Now, look, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from watching Caan's movies or his performances. I'm just saying that I know somebody personally who couldn't deal with his on-set behavior, which was very inappropriate and very rude. He had that attitude that he thought he can get away with anything. Um, I don't remember the name of the movie, but I know it has Ellen Burstyn in it. It has Ellen Burstyn and James Caan. But it doesn't distinguish the fact that James Caan is still a damn good actor. I mean, same thing with Dustin Hoffman, despite all the accusations that he's gotten over the years. And Dustin Hoffman, of course, infamously, according to Meryl Streep, was very rather abusive on the set of Kramer versus Kramer. You know, and of course, from what I understand, and I got, if Hoffman actually said this, then he is a horrible person. But he actually shat on John Cazale, who played, of course, in The Godfather and Dog Day Afternoon, right after he died. I guess just just as a method way of getting Meryl Streep upset. But Meryl Streep was, of course, going to be married to John Cazale before he died, very, very young, like I said, in the late 70s. But yeah, the other movie that he did that was nominated for Best Picture was the Francis Ford Coppola movie, The Conversation, which is also a masterpiece of the 1970s. It stars Gene Hackman as a surveillance expert who is listening in on private conversations taking place out in public. And it's very intense. I mean, it's a very, very intense, brilliantly edited movie that, you know, everybody who's interested in film needs to see. It's essential. And I will be doing a commentary on that in a couple of years, along with Godfather 2. Hmm. Now, I mentioned before that George Lucas had helped Francis Ford Coppola on the movie, specifically with the segments with like the newspapers and everything. And Coppola actually returned the favor to Lucas by producing American Graffiti, which came out in 1973. And infamously, American Graffiti was not liked by Universal, the studio behind its release. In fact, the head of the studio, Ned Tannen, almost refused to release it. You know, he wanted to release it as like a TV movie or something. And Francis Ford Coppola stepped in and said, and remember, this was right after he had won for The Godfather for Best Screenplay, and said, look, I mean, you have no idea what the hell you have here. I mean, if you're not going to release the film, I'll buy it and I'll release it through my own studio. And so that forced Universal to release it, and it became the third biggest box office hit of the year. So, you know, and Coppola wanted Lucas to work on Apocalypse Now with him. He really wanted Lucas to co-direct Apocalypse Now with him. And after the success of American Graffiti, George Lucas said that he wanted to do a PG-rated, family-friendly movie set in space, which we all know eventually became Star Wars. Because he noticed how American Graffiti became such a hit with a PG rating that he thought, maybe I shouldn't do the R-rated Apocalypse Now, and I'll do the PG-rated Star Wars. But I mean, it is true that George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola and all of them were very much against the war in Vietnam. And Star Wars, in many ways, is an allegory for Vietnam, where, I mean, yes, people have said it's World War II in space, but in actuality, if you think about it, the Rebel Alliance is meant to represent the Vietnamese, and the evil Galactic Empire is actually the U.S. government, and specifically the military-industrial complex. That's how I view Star Wars. I mean, I know that others may not view it that way, but even George Lucas himself admitted it, that, you know, he wrote it as a Vietnam allegory, but also presented as World War II in space. Well, as we all know, Coppola was working on Apocalypse Now while Lucas was working on Star Wars. And after Star Wars came out and was a hit, Lucas then wanted to do a sequel to American Graffiti, of all things. And so his co-writers on American Graffiti didn't want to do it. And also, I don't believe Coppola did not produce more American Graffiti, but George Lucas edited a segment in that movie, More American Graffiti, that was actually set in Vietnam, where Toad from the first movie is, of course, eventually lost in the jungle, and realizes a little too late that the war is a sham, that it's just for profit and not for any kind of real there's no reason for them to be there. And of course, now he's just trying to think of any excuse he can just to get the hell out of Vietnam and go back to San Francisco and be with Candy Clark. I mean, come on, who wouldn't? Yes, Rob Gasper. I absolutely, yeah. Hackman's best performance, yeah, is probably in Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation. And of course, we were talking about Superman earlier, who played Lex Luthor in Superman, but Gene Hackman. So yeah, there you go. I did a commentary earlier tonight for Queen of Hearts Act 4. I did a cameo in this act. Shameless plug. Oh, I love the plug, Jamie. I love the plug. Yeah, everybody go check out that commentary for Queen of Hearts Act 4 on Jamie's channel. I mean, that would be awesome. Please do so. Please do so. Hey, Christian, how you doing? Big Money Stone. Marlon Brando is my godfather. Yes. I think he's everybody's godfather. He is so awesome. Oh, man. Al Pacino's transformation in this movie is chilling. There's something downright chilling about it. I said before that there are times when I can't help but laugh. There are times that are supposed to be serious that I can't help but laugh. But man, when Al Pacino does become a full-on gangster in this movie, oh shit, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Now, I think this is a good time to talk a little bit about the gangster genre because, okay, everybody has different tastes. Everybody has different opinions, of course. And the thing about the gangster genre for me is it's difficult for me to get involved in a lot of gangster stories that are on screen. Part of that is just due to the fact that I find characters, not all the time, I mean, certainly not all the time, but a lot of the time rather despicable. And I always have to tell myself, okay, well, do I have a reason to watch these assholes commit these heinous crimes? And even if I don't empathize with the characters, can I at least find the movie entertaining? Now, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that my favorite film in the gangster genre it's an unusual choice, but I think it's a choice that and I'm not trying to be contrarian, I'm not trying to be outlandish here, but the truth of the matter is that the original 1932 version of Scarface, starring Paul Muni and starring George Raft and Boris Karloff, produced by Howard Hughes, directed by Howard Hawks. This is without a doubt my favorite gangster movie. Not because it's the quote-unquote original gangster movie. I mean, this came out at the time of James Cagney and the Warner Brothers gangster pictures like Little Caesar. Scarface, it's amazing because it's based on Al Capone, and it's set during the Prohibition era, which is a fascinating time. And the machine guns that they use, the Tommy guns that they use in Scarface, they actually use real bullets, which gives, I think the original Scarface a level of verisimilitude that other later gangster films just don't have. And yes, I do prefer it over the 1983 remake with Al Pacino. However, I do own the 1983 remake because I like it that much. I actually do have a lot of respect for the Scarface remake. I just prefer the 1932 original. Um, Now, when most people think of the gangster genre, they think of one of two films. They think of Godfather, or they think, of course, Jamie, of course, says, I love the gangster genre, Goodfellas being my favorite of the bunch. And this, unfortunately, is where I do not like Goodfellas. I am one of those ones that looks at Goodfellas and I think big deal. And the thing is that, look, I have no reason to care about Henry Hill. It's just the truth. I'm sorry. I'm being perfectly honest here. There's no reason for me to care about Henry Hill. By the time his wife leaves, I've lost all interest in the movie at that point. And to be perfectly honest, I would rather watch the quasi sequel to Goodfellas, which is called My Blue Heaven, starring Steve Martin and Rick Moranis and Joan Cusack, which came out the same year. I think only like a month, either a month before or after Goodfellas. So, and the other reason why I don't care for Goodfellas necessarily is, look, technically speaking, it's brilliant. I mean, the editing, the music, the production design, the performances. Yes, I agree, they're all great. But my issue with Goodfellas is that I just don't give a damn about anybody in that movie. I mean, Henry Hill, I don't like Henry Hill. I don't want to watch Henry Hill. Although I will say this, and this is the one asterisk I will give Goodfellas. The descent into the that long shot going down into the restaurant, and and uh, and then she asks him, "Well, what are you into?" Oh yeah, carpentry or whatever, or hardware, something like that. Yeah, it lets you know how many times I have seen Goodfellas. But okay, now here is the famous scene of The Godfather, which was shot at the end of the first week. We'll go back to Goodfellas in a minute. But this was the sequence where supposedly saved Francis Ford Coppola from being fired, because even though this was shot during the first week of production, at the end of the first week of production, it wasn't until many months later, maybe 2 months later into production, when Paramount was on the verge of firing Coppola. They were planning on doing it by the end of the week. And so Coppola did some drastic things. He fired some crew members that he felt were a burden, that were in fact trying to sabotage his job and his reputation. So he just fired 4 people, off the bat. And it wasn't until they went back and looked at this scene where Paramount was convinced, you know what, maybe they did make the right choice with Al Pacino. And of course, yeah, so this is the scene that won the studio over in terms of not only Coppola, but also Pacino. And of course, it's the most famous scene in the whole movie, probably. This showdown in the restaurant. And the violence, it hits you. It's so visceral. But yeah, I mean, just to close out real quick about Goodfellas, I'm just not a fan of it. And going back to what I was saying about Marlon Brando refusing to accept. Yeah, I did like Gangs of New York. I got to rewatch that. I really did like that movie. I really, really did. Leonardo DiCaprio and Bill the Butcher. I can't believe his name escapes me, but no, I did like Gangs of New York. That is one Scorsese film that I really did like, and I love The Departed. I love The Departed as well. I love a lot of Scorsese movies, but there's certain ones I don't care for. And ironically enough, it's his two most popular films, Raging Bull and Goodfellas, that I'm just not a fan of. And going back to what I was saying about Marlon Brando refusing the Best Actor Oscar for The Godfather, based on the fact of how Hollywood treated Native Americans, do you think he would have voted for Goodfellas or Dances with Wolves? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Look, he probably didn't give a shit, but he was probably busy working on The Freshman with Matthew Broderick at that time. But yes, Daniel Day-Lewis. Thank you, Jamie. I mean, but yeah, I was going to say there is one other gangster movie that I absolutely adore, and it's not mentioned enough, which I think is, I think is so disappointing. But Road to Perdition, which is the movie that Sam Mendes directed in 2002. Conrad L. Hall won an Oscar for the cinematography, and it stars Tom Hanks in a rare uh, um, bad guy role, quote unquote. Tom Hanks plays a gangster, and Paul Newman plays his father figure in the Irish mafia. And the rebellious son, the son that's a total fuck up, in to Paul Newman in Road to Perdition, is played by Daniel Craig. Now, this was before he was cast as James Bond. And of course, Sam Mendes would later direct 2 James Bond movies with Daniel Craig, Spectre and Skyfall. And Road to Perdition, I remember when I saw it in the theater, that was set in the 1930s. It's based on a graphic novel. And, okay, this is the scene I was talking about, that Brando, he put weights underneath that bed so that it was much more heavy for them to carry him up the stairs. You can see they're struggling with him. Oh, that's great. That is just great. All right, to do a timestamp real quick, we are at 1 hour and 33 minutes. Jump to 1 hour and 33 minutes. We have approximately 1 hour and 25 minutes to go. So we're over the hump. We're more than halfway through The Godfather here, everybody. But at any rate, thank you, everybody, again for joining me tonight. Cliff, Rob, Jamie, Christian, I love you guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming in tonight and joining me for this 50th anniversary edition of The Godfather. But yeah, Road to Perdition is a gangster movie that I don't think is brought up nearly enough. I can't help it. That is definitely in my top 3 gangster movies, along with Scarface from 1932, and of course The Godfather. And I would put Godfather 2 up there as well. I love Godfather 2. Godfather 3, on the other hand, let's put it this way. I remember when I first watched Godfather 3. All I remember about that movie was Al Pacino saying, just when I thought that I was out, they pulled me back in. That was really Francis Ford Coppola talking when Paramount basically pushed him and Mario Puzo to do a 3rd film. And look, The Godfather 3, I don't think it's awful. I don't think it's terrible. I don't even think it's unwatchable. The thing about Godfather 3 is that it's meant to be a coda to the first 2 films, not a part 3, and thus it's not worthy of the title. I also have a huge problem with Robert Duvall being replaced by George Hamilton, of all people. That is one of the most insane acting changes. Actor changes I can't imagine. And the story goes is that Robert Duvall refused the part because Al Pacino was making about 3 or 4 times much money as he was, and he thought, look, if Al Pacino is making twice as much as money as I am, that's fine, but why 3 to 4 times? So it was really just a dispute over money, but I can understand where he's coming from. Had Robert Duvall been in Godfather 3, though, it would have been much better. I think it would have been I think it would have been much better. But as it stands, Godfather 3, I mean, and it was just released only a couple years ago. Coppola actually re-edited the movie by changing the title to Mario Puzo's The Godfather: The Death of Michael Corleone. That is the full title of Godfather 3 now. And it's a much better title, but it's the exact same movie. He didn't cut anything out of it. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty much the same movie, just with a different title change. But I agree, I actually agree that the title change is much more appropriate. But look, I will never do I will never do an audio commentary on part three. I will do one on part two, but I'm not going to do one on part three. Trust me. Even if I actually make it to 2040, if I actually make it to 2040, I won't be doing a 50th anniversary commentary for Godfather 3. Just trust me on that. Because I just don't think it's worth talking about for 163 minutes. I mean, the first two Godfather films are just so perfect together on their own that third film feels just a little, I don't know. It feels so unnecessary, but that's just me. I mean, I mean, there are those who champion part three. I'm not one of them though. But then again, I don't hate it or spit on it either. Ah, yes, yeah, Joe Spinell, the amazing Joe Spinell. Yeah, he was going to be in part three, but died not long before filming. Yep, that's very true. Very true. Well, I'll point out Joe Spinell for those who don't know him when he appears later on in the third act. So here we are now in Italy, and I think this is actually going to be the perfect time while we're in Italy um, to talk about the cinematographer because he is actually one of my favorite cinematographers who's ever lived, and I've seen so many films that he shot that I mean we have to talk about him. His name is Gordon Willis. And now he made a lot. He shot a lot of movies in New York. He shot a lot of movies for Woody Allen, Alan J. Pacula, James Bridges, and also three films. All three Godfather films. But he also shot All the President's Men. One of the first movies that he shot right before The Godfather was Hal Ashby's The Landlord, which is a particular favorite of mine, directed by Hal Ashby and starring Beau Bridges. In 1972, he also shot the Barbra Streisand vehicle Up the Sandbox, and then eventually he would do All the President's Men, The Parallax View, Annie Hall, Manhattan, and he would actually direct a horror movie in 1980 starring Talia Shire, who of course plays in the Godfather films, including Part Three. Windows was a movie that he directed in 1980, which was basically about a um, a woman stalking another woman, and the woman doing the stalking was a lesbian. And that was a film that got almost that was almost universally hated by critics. And of course, it came out at a time where Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel were going on their violence against women rampage that was in the slasher films of the time. And yeah, Gordon Willis made this horror film called Windows, which it's not the worst movie out there, but then again, I mean, it's not for everybody. Oddly enough, in 1980, Pacino made a movie with William Friedkin called Cruising, which is about Al Pacino plays a detective that goes undercover in the in the leather bar community of New York in the early '80s to sniff out a serial killer that is targeting gay men. Talk about one of the most controversial movies ever made. I mean, both windows and cruising were picketed, and they were attacked by protesters and different groups and everything. And Cruising is actually a really good movie. I mean, I do highly recommend it, even though it has a very ambiguous ending. And Al Pacino's performance, it's a little icky. I mean, the movie itself is a bit icky, but at the same time, I mean, it's absolutely worth seeing for those of you. I mean, you all should check it out. But finally, Gordon Willis, he also shot The Money Pit and Presumed Innocent. And the very last movie he shot was with Alan J. Pacula called The Devil's Own in 1997 with Harrison Ford and Brad Pitt. But Gordon Willis, whenever I think of Gordon Willis, I think about a movie he did in 1987 called Bright Lights, Big City, based on the novel by Jay McInerney and directed by James Bridges. And Michael J. Fox plays basically a fact checker in New York who's addicted to cocaine, and he's addicted to the New York City nightlife. And Michael J. Fox has a whole monologue, a dramatic monologue in that movie, which is so impressive and so amazing to listen to. And Gordon Willis, believe it or not, did a commentary for the Bright Lights Big City DVD before he passed away in 2014. So, look, highly recommend you check out Bright Lights Big City and get that DVD with that commentary on it. There's also a second commentary on that disc with the author of the book who gave the movie his seal of approval. The movie also stars like Phoebe Cates, Kiefer Sutherland. It's actually a really, really underrated movie that, here again, like Road to Perdition, I think more people need to see. Yeah, Michael J. Fox, Kiefer Sutherland, Diane Wiest, Sam Robards. Yeah, great cast. James Robards is in that. I mean, a very good cast. And in fact, that was the movie where Michael J. Fox worked with his real life wife right before they got married in the late 1980s. But yeah, I mean, like from the opening shot, from that opening sequence with Marlon Brando, I mean, the cinematography in this movie is just so warm. I think that's the perfect way to describe the cinematography in this movie. It's warm, it's relaxing, it's just a pleasant. It's a joy to the eyes. It's it. Yeah, I mean, this is a gorgeous movie. It's a gorgeously shot movie, whether we're in New York or whether we're in Italy. And yes, they actually went to Italy to shoot. Francis Ford Coppola, as the novel was getting more progressively popular during production, he was able to push the studio to move the production to Italy. And we actually spent several weeks in Italy for the production. How do you how do you feel about the HBO cut of The Godfather that merges one and two? I think it's my favorite way to watch it. Yeah, in 1981, HBO put out a cut called The Godfather: The Complete Saga, which is basically both films together. I have never seen it that way. I would be curious to know. I'd be curious to watch it that way and get that special kind of experience. Um, because like I said, I got the Blu-ray, so I just pop out part one and then I put in part two, usually, but not always, right afterward. But yeah, I'd be interested in watching that HBO cut. Yeah, absolutely. Joe Spinell was going to be in part three. Yeah, okay. I like Gordon Willis. 2 days ago, I watched the Midsummer Night's Sex comedy he did with Woody Allen. Yep. Yeah, that's a lovely film shot out in the country. Yeah. He shot black and white movies too. I mean, he's just a brilliant cinematographer. And there are some great interviews with him on YouTube. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Now, let me see real quick. Who else on the crew do I need to talk about? Well, okay. Nino Rota, who did the music, actually died really young too. He died at the age of 19 at the age of 67 in 1979. Um, but he was an Italian composer, pianist, conductor, and academic, best known for his film scores for Fellini and Visconti. And he did music for Shakespeare's movies, directed by Franco Zeffirelli, as well as the Godfather trilogy, earning the Academy Award for Best Original Score for The Godfather Part 2. Yeah, Godfather Part 2 got 6 Oscars, but here again, a lot of people think that it should have gotten a seventh for Best Actor for Al Pacino. Mm-mm. Ah, wow. Trying to keep talking for 3 hours here. Ah, hmm. Rhoda did the score for Fellini's Eight and a Half, which is often cited as one of the factors which makes the film cohesive. And his score for Fellini's Juliet of the Spirits included a collaboration with Eugene Walter on the song Go Milk the Moon. And they teamed again for a song, What is a Youth? Part of Rota's score for Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, which came out in 1968. Now, of course, this is Talia Shire, who is actually Francis Ford Coppola's sister. I did not realize that until just a few years ago. But apparently, and look, Talia later did the Rocky films with Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone originally wanted Carrie Snodgrass, which was a really gifted actress who was nominated in 1970 for A Diary of a Mad Housewife, based on the novel by Sue Kaufman, a very landmark novel of the women's movement in the 70s. That's who Stallone wanted. In fact, he even offered to give up some of his percentage points just so she could do it. And Carrie Snodgrass wanted a bigger film to do for her comeback to the screen, and she turned him down and regretted it till the day she died. Absolutely. But, Talia Shire is wonderful in the Rocky films as Adrian. And one of the things I love about the first Rocky is, of course, that ending, because it wasn't so much about him winning or losing the match. It was all about him winning the girl's heart. And that's why I think that ending to Rocky is so damn powerful. I don't look at it as a boxing story so much as just a story of two people, one a boxer and one who works in a pet shop, and they have a rocky road to have a consummating relationship. But it's just powerful. It really is powerful. You touch my sister again, I'll kill you. Yeah. James Caan just beating the shit out of this guy. But of course, as we know, James Caan won't be alive for very much longer because he's going to be gunned down here pretty soon. He does appear in Godfather Part 2, but only at the end in a cameo when they're waiting for Don Corleone's arrival. And we have Al Pacino and getting married in Italy. Lovely Italian wedding here. Yeah, this movie has two big weddings. There's the opening wedding when the Godfather is seeing people for requests and everything. And then there's this one. Oh, these shots of Italy. Oh man, this is gorgeous. Yeah, I'm so glad this was actually shot on a location and that Coppola actually stuck to his guns. I mean, that's the thing. He was actually convinced he was going to be fired. He actually became the Godfather essentially when he started firing folks left and right. I love the combo Godfather's cut. I second that motion. Ah, okay. Hmm. I don't know if it's available on any other physical format aside from VHS, though. I mean, is there a way to watch that specific cut? I should have looked that up before the commentary, I admit. But now, I might as well get this out of the way now. Let's talk about The Godfather's standing in film history as one of the greatest movies of all time. Here again, everybody being subjective with their opinions, but at the same time, The Godfather has been cited as consistently great by, look, the Rotten Tomatoes score is 97%. There has to be one contrarian asshole. But look, the truth of the matter is this is an impeccable movie from top to bottom, every aspect and facet of production. Is it one of the greatest movies ever made? I do believe so. That being said, it is not a personal favorite. Now, interestingly enough, I mean, I've seen The Godfather, like I said, maybe 7 or 8 times, and it's a movie that I can return to every 3 to 4 years. When I was growing up, a movie I saw much, much more than The Godfather is, of course, the movie that The Godfather ultimately eclipsed in box office tickets, which, of course, is Gone with the Wind. Not counting for inflation, okay? Not counting for inflation. Gone with the Wind is still number one when you don't when you do yeah when you don't count inflation. But The Godfather basically eclipsed it in 1972, and in fact, a lot of critics, including Leonard Maltin, cited The Godfather as being the 1970s answer to Gone with the Wind. Now, as we all know, Gone with the Wind has been undergone a lot of scrutiny in recent years. I mean, the screenwriter, the Academy Award-winning screenwriter of 12 Years a Slave, came out and argued how the film's depiction of slavery is all wrong and it's offensive. But then again, you have other critics that are saying, you know, but we could still have a conversation about it while we watch it, which would be very, very healthy and enlightening. And I agree with that. That being said, Gone with the Wind I've seen too many times at this point that I would rather watch The Godfather more at this point. I'm just a little tired of Gone with the Wind at this point. But of course, people, they always bring up Citizen Kane, or they bring up Vertigo, or they bring up The Shawshank Redemption. Now, all those films are great. And, I mean, they consistently appear on greatest film lists. I have absolutely no objection to any of them. Now, if Goodfellas was on one of those lists, yes, I would object. But no, a lot of the films that are typically cited as the all-time greatest films, I tend to agree with. And The Godfather is no exception. However, my personal favorite movie of all time, which I would vote as the greatest, is not because of veterans bias, but rather because of the fact that it is the only movie that you could definitively say healed the entire world. And that would be 1946's The Best Years of Our Lives, directed by William Wyler, which was a massive box office hit when it came out. And in fact, it swept the Academy Awards, winning everything over It's a Wonderful Life, which didn't get popular until much, much later. So that will always be my vote as the greatest film ever made. And on AFI's list, it's always maintained its spot at like number 37 when The Godfather is number 2. And I'm not sure if that's just because that more people have seen The Godfather, which of course there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, I honestly think that the greatest film ever made should go to the film that actually healed the world, and that is The Best Years of Our Lives. The Godfather is a great, great, great gangster story set in the middle of the 20th century, and it excels on every genre and every level. And I don't have a single complaint about it. I mean that. But here again, it is not a personal favorite, and I only feel like watching it every 3 or 4 years along with sequel. Because to me, the greatest achievement that a film could accomplish is actually having a massive healing effect or positive effect on the world. And, The Godfather, it's an extremely well crafted, well told story about the mafia in the middle of the 20th century. Bear in mind that in 1972, that when people were watching this film, that a lot of them lived in the 1940s. So they related to not just the characters, but also the setting. And they were just in love with this film. The very first time that Coppola showed this to an audience, it was over an argument that he had with Robert Evans at Paramount. Bob, yeah, Evans over at Paramount, where it was over the music score. And Coppola said, "Look, let me show it to an audience of like 30 to 40 people. You can have final say if we should take the music out or not." The audience loved it. They had smiles on their faces when the movie was over. And they asked him about, well, is the music fine? They said, oh, it's great. We love the music. So, that basically killed any controversy that Evans had when it came to objecting to the music score, because he had just produced Love Story with Ryan O'Neal, which was a huge box office hit, and the music of that film was like a huge deal. So apparently, he thought he was also some kind of music expert, but of course, the audience proved him wrong. And this is, of course, the graphic death of James Caan's character. An unforgettable death, needless to say. Quite unforgettable. Yeah. See, I looked and I can't find the Godfather epic cut streaming anywhere. Not since 2016. Yeah, it's kind of a shame that Coppola doesn't have that cut available on at the very least like the 4K set. I mean, you would think that'd be something that collectors would want to have, because a lot of people discover The Godfather watching that cut. So yeah, I can completely understand why people like you, Jamie, would prefer that particular cut. Absolutely. When I even think of the words film or cinema, I think of Vito Corleone behind his desk. Yes. Cliff, I absolutely 100% agree. Yeah. Like I said, I definitely agree with the vast majority that this is one of the all-time greats. But finally, just one last time, it is not a personal favorite. And it's not even due to the fact that it's a gangster movie. It's not even due to that, or a movie about the mafia. It's just there are lots of other movies that I would prefer to watch more often. And of course, there's a lot of movies that I just haven't watched yet that I need to see eventually. So, but look, I'm proud to own the Blu-ray set in my collection. I really am. Yeah, I have this Blu-ray set, which I believe came out in I think it was 2012 that this came out. But this includes the restorations of all three films: Godfather Part Two, and Godfather Part Three. That's Francis Ford Coppola's signature there, and it's basically a four disc set where you get you get every film on one disc each, and then you get an entire disc full of bonus content. But I'm perfectly happy with this set, and here again, I mean, I'll be watching The Godfather a lot more in the coming years. Absolutely, I want to make that. I want to make that absolutely clear right now. Um, I'll be watching The Godfather much more, and I'll be watching Part Two much more in the next 2 years, especially since where I'm going to have to prepare for that Part Two commentary, which is going to be 3 hours and 20 minutes, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. Yeah, I mean, it's just a shame we don't have access to that Godfather epic cut. That is a shame. That is a shame. All right, let me do a timestamp real quick, see where we are. We are at approximately 2 hours and 2 minutes. So go ahead and jump to 2 hours and 2 minutes whenever um, when you get there. Got approximately 55 minutes left. 55 minutes left of The Godfather. We still need to finish up in Italy, and then we need to see Michael come back and basically start to take over the family business at that point. As you can see, he's back on his feet. Are you ready to do me this service? Now he's returning the service from the first from the opening scene of the movie. Yeah, this is a powerful moment too. I want you to use your power and all your skills. Oh yes. I don't want his mother to see him this way. Oh. Brando's reaction here. Oh, it's wonderful. Look how they massacred my boy. Oh. Exactly, Cliff. Exactly. Look how they massacred my boy. Yep. Hmm. The first time I saw this movie, I did not see this coming. What would happen to Al Pacino's bride right after he marries her? I mean, this was pretty shocking to me when I first saw it. Pretty shocking. And you know what? I'm going to take a 5 minute bathroom break. I will be right back. I apologize, but I do need to take a bathroom break. I will be right back. And we are back. And yes, his bride tragically just exploded in the car. Like I said, when I first saw that, that very much shocked me when I first saw that part. Yeah, she was a beautiful woman. Yeah, and Coppola mentioned on his commentary that the reason why he cast her was how she basically strutted away from him. Thought that that was a beautiful walk away, I guess you could say, and that's apparently the reason why he hired her for the part. As far as California and Kansas, wow, it's and but yeah, this is the meeting with the other families and everything. How did things ever get so far? Exactly, exactly. How did things ever get so far? So unfortunate, so unnecessary. You know, Brando just kills it. Brando has a hell of a scene over a dead body again in Last Tango in Paris when he mourns his wife. Hmm. I haven't seen Last Tango in Paris in years, and I remember not liking it at all. Maybe a second rewatch would make me change my mind, but that might be a movie I could rewatch for a commentary later on. But I don't remember liking it. I hate to say it. Brando's very last movie for the screen is actually a very good one, directed by Frank Oz, starring Edward Norton and Robert De Niro, called The Score, which came out in 2001, um, which is actually a hell of a way to go. That's actually a really, really good movie to end a film career on, considering the fact, of course, he had done The Island of Dr. Moreau, and he was mocked mercilessly, excuse me, for that one. Dr. Evil and Mini Me were, of course, based on Marlon Brando and his acting partner in Island of Dr. Moreau. We insisted on being with him in every scene almost. Very controversial production that ended up being a terrible movie, starring Val Kilmer and Fairuza Balk, which I don't think is worth seeing. Oh, I love that painting of the locomotive in the background. That's amazing. Somebody says to him, "I have powders." Want to control it as a business and keep it respectable. Yeah, it's all about business. I know. I mean, this is typical of the genre, and gangsters always use the same excuse. It's just all business, okay? I mean, okay, fine. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to criticize. Whatever. Yeah, it's all business. We'll just write it off as that. It's just not my type of thing. It's not. I mean. I mean, I wonder. I mean, and that's the thing. I wonder if, like, if a mafia family would look at me as some kind of pansy just because I'd rather watch movies than, get into business. It's just not my thing. We are all reasonable men. We don't have to give assurances. The Godfather wants to peacefully end this. He just wants to peacefully bury the hatchet of anything, and have a lot of admiration for him right here because of the Solozo business. Yep. Here again, business, business, business. There's another interesting film with Brando that I actually have a copy of on DVD. I don't know where it is right now, but he made a movie that not many people have seen in 1980 with George C. Scott called The Formula, which was directed by the guy that directed Rocky, John G. Avildsen, and The Karate Kid later on. And it's about this formula for a new type of fuel that apparently the Nazis had created, and that people wanted the formula like 40 years later, and it's all connected to the brutal murder that happens in L.A. And George C. Scott plays this detective, and he has to meet with this basically this oil baron played by Marlon Brando. And it's such a joy watching those two actors together that it makes you forget how mediocre the movie is in general. Because the book that it was based on was more like the lead was more like a 35-year-old James Bond type, and they cast George C. Scott, who of course was much more older and much more heavier, and it just kind of ruined the adaptation. But watching Marlon Brando and George C. Scott was a joy, and in fact, they got along so well. They reportedly spent much of their time together playing chess during the production of Formula. So a little bit more Brando trivia there for you. And of course, George C. Scott would star in the movie Patton, which won Francis Ford Coppola the Academy Award for Best Screenplay, which he is also convinced is the reason why he wasn't ultimately fired. Because during that week of panic where he knew he was going to be fired eventually at the end of the week, and he fired all those people, he also won the Oscar for writing Patton. So that kind of helped his cause. You know what I'm saying? If he should be struck by a bolt of lightning, then I'm going to have to blame some of the people in this room, and then I do not forgive. Badass. Yes. So here we have Diane Keaton again. I've always loved Diane Keaton. I mean, there's not a lot of women. There's not a lot of women in The Godfather. I mean, we just have Diane Keaton and Talia Shire, and of course we had Michael's wife who got blown up in the car. But other than that, I mean, very little women. Very little women in this movie. I think in 1972, I think most female audiences were buying tickets for Cabaret instead of The Godfather. Both of my parents loved Cabaret, but yeah, they were very split on The Godfather. They were very, very split on this. But like I said, I don't have a single complaint. I don't have a single complaint about it. I mean, it's a it's a brilliant movie based on a brilliant book. And like it's like how much more can you actually say about The Godfather? I mean, at this point, I mean, it's just yeah. Apparently, this particular scene right here, Coppola said on his commentary, this was one of the other reasons why Pacino wasn't really looked very highly by the executives at Paramount, because they thought he looked like a preacher here because of his hat. Like, this is the guy that's supposed to take over the family business. Like, he looks like a preacher. Like, whatever, man. I mean, believe me, they quickly dispensed those opinions rather quickly. I mean, pretty much by production was over, everybody loved the movie. So, I mean, it won over the studio by the end. I mean, especially when, they insisted on another 40 minutes, which actually really does add to the movie. And jazz singer Morgana King is Mama Corleone. Oh man, yeah, maybe it's just because I mean, I'm gonna mangle all these Italian names. It's just I'm sorry, everybody, but it's just inevitable. Let me look her up real quick. Hmm. Oh, she passed away in 2018. American jazz singer and actress, had her debut and breakout role in the film as Carmela Corleone in The Godfather and Godfather 2. Yeah. Hmm. She didn't do many movies after the Godfather movies, unfortunately. But she did a lot of variety shows on television. I was looking up about the Godfather saga, which of course is that HBO um, epic version. Apparently, in 2012, AMC showed The Godfather for its 40th anniversary in high definition. And it also reinstated the violence that had been previously been removed from its original broadcast. Oh, so yeah, if I guess the only way we can watch it is if AMC actually shows it again for its 50th anniversary, which is possible. But yeah, the idea behind that cut was that Francis Ford Coppola asked his editor Barry Malkin to make a 7-hour version for television. Coppola reportedly did this project to raise money for Apocalypse Now, which was severely over budget at the time. The resulting film was in chronological order. The Godfather Part Two had cut back and forth between scenes in the early 1900s and late 1950s, and was therefore both a prequel and sequel to The Godfather, of course. Malkin also toned down the violence, sex, and language for a television audience. The television film incorporated additional footage not included in the original films, including Don Fanucci being attacked by street thugs, Vito Corleone's first encounter with Hyman Roth, Vito killing two of the mafiosi who worked for Don Ciccio and were instrumental in his family's death, Michael Corleone's reunion with his father after his return from Sicily, Sonny Corleone's taking charge of the family after his father was severely wounded, and Michael's vengeance upon Fabrizio for killing Apollonia. The previously deleted scenes totaled almost 75 minutes. Hal Erickson summarized the results as follows. While this rearrangement was reasonably coherent, the rhythm and pacing of the original theatrical versions of the two films was severely damaged. The inclusion of scenes previously removed from the theatrical prints also stretched out what was already an overlong project. Even allowing for the achievement of pulling off this gargantuan editing assignment, the Godfather saga is a lumpy affair which seems to stop and start at irregular intervals and never truly picks up momentum. Um, if it does show up on AMC, I'll watch it though. I'll still watch it just out of just out of sheer curiosity. Yeah. Uh, if anybody in the chat wants to share anything more about The Godfather, please do so. I mean, we have about I think 45 minutes left. We're at 2:21, 2 hours and 21 minutes, and we have approximately 46 minutes to go. So, anybody wants to share anything about The Godfather, please do so in the chat. I mean, that would be awesome. Because I think I've gotten to that point where I've run out of things to say, but I mean, I'll definitely try to. I mean, I knew coming in tonight this was going to be a challenge, but But here again, I mean, with this particular challenge, I was more than happy to do it because, I mean, look, I mean, it's a pleasure to watch The Godfather. It really truly is. Now, eventually, we will see a particularly colorful actor show up. I don't think we've seen him on screen yet. But hold on, just 1 second. We mentioned before Joe Spinell. Now, Joe Spinell is a very interesting, colorful guy because he was also in both the Rocky films, Rocky 1 and 2. He was in Taxi Driver, Sorcerer, directed by William Friedkin, and he was also in Cruising. In fact, in 1980, he'd had 9 films. He did 9 films in 1980. And of course, the most famous one, along with Cruising with Al Pacino, is he did this horror film called Maniac, which had Tom Savini's very gory effects. And if I understand it correctly, for Maniac, he actually wrote the screenplay. Am I wrong on that? Or I think he was at least responsible for the story. Yeah, he co-wrote the screenplay and also was responsible for the story for Maniac, which was a psychological slasher film about a serial killer in New York who scalps women, and it's a rather disgusting movie. But look, I will admit that Joe Spinell is very very impressive. Okay, now this actor, I like this guy right here, the guy with the huge glasses. His name is Alex Rocco, and he was in a number of films that I saw growing up. I mean, just to name a few, he was in Herbie Goes Bananas. He played one of the villains in Herbie Goes Bananas alongside John Vernon, of all people. That's what I remember him from when I was growing up. However, I mean, he was in a lot of films I really liked. I mean, he was in the Boston Strangler with Tony Curtis in 1968, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1967. And 1973, he was in the Friends of Eddie Coyle, directed by Peter Yates. The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole. And the other movie that I love him in is he plays Anthony Edwards' dad in Gotcha, which is a film from 1985 where Anthony Edwards played this college kid who goes over to Europe during the Cold War and gets involved in espionage. And his father is played by Alex Rocco here with the glasses, and he is so hilarious in that movie. Um, delivering every single line, on point. I mean, he was just terrific. And he's also in a brilliant horror movie, in a very key role in a brilliant horror movie called The Entity with Barbara Hershey, which is also another favorite, which I have on Shout Factory Blu-ray. And he has a very small but very important role in The Entity as the Barbara Hershey's boyfriend, who we never see for a specific reason. He's only in a couple scenes, but he's very powerful in that. Very, very powerful. He passed away in 2015, and his very last movies were Smoking Aces and The Country Bears, The Wedding Planner, and the last film he did was in 2017, which was Don't Sleep. But I know Joe Spinell appears somewhere in the third hour of this movie. See, that's what I'm saying. I've seen this movie 6 or 7 times, and yet I can't remember every single little thing about it. That's what I'm saying. I knew this commentary was going to be a challenge. Um, okay, this is the scene right here that was written by screenwriter Robert Towne, who of course wrote Chinatown. He won the Oscar for that, and also The Last Detail, which is a particular favorite of mine. And the rationale behind this scene, it came about because Coppola said that, well, we don't have a scene with dialogue between Brando and Pacino. We have to have one. And of course, this is right before Brando's character dies, unfortunately, in the are you happy with your wife and children? No? A very good little scene right here. Very good scene. Alex Rocco was the voice of reoccurring character Roger Myers Jr., itchy and scratchy producer on my favorite TV show, The Simpsons. Ah, okay. Okay. Off topic, but it's pretty cool that the one character that makes it all the way the last scene of part 3 is Al Neri. Ah. Now, one thing I also wanted to mention, going back to how I occasionally like to laugh in The Godfather, if any of you are fans of spoof films Airplane and The Naked Gun, then you should check out the spoof of Godfather and other gangster films like Goodfellas and Casino that came out in 1998 called Jane Austen's Mafia. Well, the original title was Jane Austen's Mafia, and then the studio insisted on removing Jane Austen's name because they were afraid that the general public wouldn't know who Jane Austen is. Here again, the stupidity of Hollywood studio executives. But anyway, so the movie was just released as Mafia. And so it does recreate scenes from The Godfather. Lloyd Bridges played the role of the Godfather in the Mafia movie, and it was Jay Moore that played the Al Pacino role. I remember when I saw the movie in the theater in 1998, and I remember laughing quite frequently, but at the same time, it wasn't a spoof film that lived up to, Naked Gun or Hot Shots or Airplane or Top Secret or any of those other movies that they all worked on. It just wasn't near as funny or good, but it did have its moments. And one of my favorite bits in the movie is when Jay Moore drives up to the casino and he gives the valet, keep the car. Yeah, I do like that. And of course, like in the casino, they got those stupid they got different games like shoots and ladders, like juvenile games like that, like tic tac toe or pick a number or something like that. I mean, because it was also spoofing casino. But probably my favorite thing about Jane Austen's Mafia, my favorite spoof that they did in that movie. Look, I'm a massive fan of The English Patient, which is the film that swept the Oscars in 1996, based on the brilliant novel by Michael Ondaatje. And of course, it's infamous because, of course, what's her name from Seinfeld attacked it on one of those episodes. But in Jane Austen's Mafia, there's this brilliant spoof of The English Patient where Jay Moore, after, of course, he gets into the car and gets blown up, which I believe is taken directly from Casino. He goes to his father's funeral, and of course his whole body is burned up like The English Patient and everything, and of course the entire everyone at the funeral starts reacting at him eating the plum. They do a close up of his mouth as he's disgustingly slurping up this plum, which is, of course, a scene that was mocked in The English Patient. And of course, the entire funeral just starts puking. That is one of my favorite spoofs of any movie. That was just too much. But yeah, in Jane Austen's Mafia, Lloyd Bridges plays the Marlon Brando role and actually put a watermelon slice in his mouth. And you know who they made the kid out to look like? Chucky from the Child's Play series. Yeah. Lloyd Bridges sits down and he's like, Chucky. And of course, this little redheaded little shit comes out. And of course, that's his motivation for killing him. Jane Austen's Mafia isn't great. It's not a great spoof, and it's not even a great Godfather spoof. But man, they try and they do succeed in some ways. I mean, it's actually pretty good. The character of Johnny Fontaine was based on Frank Sinatra's history of mysteriously wiggling out of disadvantageous movie contracts. Ah, very, very interesting. Very interesting. And of course, that is the end of The Godfather. I mean, not the movie, but the end of of the Godfather's life. Vito is no longer is now finally dead. I love how the music, comes up during this sequence, and the long procession of cars going into the cemetery here is. Yeah, so they decided to do in Jane Austen's Mafia, they decided to do an English Patient spoof during the funeral of the Lloyd Bridges character. Amazing. All right, let's see here. We have approximately 24 minutes left to go. We're in the final stretch. We're in the final stretch of The Godfather from 1972. But yeah, I knew I had to talk about Jane Austen's Mafia, and I figured at this moment would have been the perfect time to bring it up. Because look, I mean, I do think it's an underrated little spoof. So I will definitely do part two in a couple of years. And hopefully by that time I will have the novel read about 3 times. So I can talk a hell of a lot more about the movies as adaptations. Although I will say that Coppola is right in that there's a lot of stuff in the book they left in the book. And one thing was this weird subplot about a woman that had to deal with enlarged genitalia. It's a sensationalized subplot, sort of like what was in Stephen King's It with the whole underage gangbang. It was a sensational subplot that, of course, Coppola was like, no, we're not going to include that, that subplot, because this is about, of course, family. This is about the Corleone family and how each of these 3 sons inherit some kind of personality trait or facet that the Godfather has. So, yeah, it's basically, like I said, it's about a father and his 3 sons. Now, of course, James Caan has been gunned down, so Sonny is no longer with us. And of course, we just lost the Godfather himself, so that basically leaves Al Pacino and Frito, played by John Cazale, who, of course, will. Well, unfortunately, I mean, we'll wait till part 2, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of tragic what Frito goes through in the second film. They're arranging a meeting in Brooklyn. That's where I live, by the way, is Brooklyn, New York. It's funny, Cliff, when you mentioned Frank Sinatra, it made me think of a movie he did, which I don't think a lot of people remember, called The Joker is Wild, where he played a real life nightclub entertainer who becomes a comedian when his vocal cords get slashed by the mafia. Made me think of that for some reason. It's actually really good. It's got Mitzi Gaynor in it. It's black and white, but it's never been released on physical media. But I think you can easily watch it on YouTube. Yeah, it's called The Joker is Wild, and it stars Frank Sinatra, who the guy that he played, the nightclub singer that he played, was actually a real life friend, and so he did that role as a favor to him. I'll tell you one gangster film that's a waste of time is Mobsters from 1991, which had Christian Slater and Patrick Dempsey. I wonder how many people out there remember that one. And I'm trying to think of what other mob movies I've seen or like or dislike. I mean, um, well, The Untouchables I think is a magnificent movie in its own right. You know, Brian De Palma, Robert De Niro. That is definitely one of the best ones too. Okay, there's Joe Spinell. Yeah, there's the late great Joe Spinell right there. Maniac is, like I said, it's a pretty grueling experience to watch if you're not used to gore and just repellent characters and situations. It can be a tough one to sit through. But look, Joe Spinell actually gave this character, multiple dimensions. And like I said, every movie I've seen him in, including The Godfather, he plays these really colorful roles, which are oh yeah, this Sergio Leone was offered The Godfather to direct, but he turned it down and instead did Once Upon a Time in America. I've only seen it once, and of course, there's the uncut version, which is over, like, I think over 4 hours long or something, which is now available, which I should watch at some point. That was actually the film debut of Jennifer Connelly. Um, Part of the reason why I want to rewatch it. But yeah, I mean, Once Upon a Time in America, I don't remember liking it or disliking it so much as just remembering that it was long. I mean, because it is a seriously, seriously long movie. But just real quick here, let me do something real quick. Okay, I mean, I did like The Irishman, the Martin Scorsese film that Joe Pesci and Al Pacino and Robert De Niro got together for. I've not seen Legend with Tom Hardy. I've not seen that. I never saw Public Enemies with Johnny Depp. American Gangster with Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington was actually really good. I do agree that that was actually a really good one. And I did like The Departed. Didn't care for Smoking Aces. Road to Perdition, I adore. Like I said, I already mentioned that one. Donnie Brasco with Al Pacino. Oh, and also Carlito's Way. That's actually a really, really excellent movie as well. Oh, Alex Rocco got it right in the right in, right in the glasses. Oh man. There's Joe Spinell again. Yeah. Small role, but he still has a significant part. Oh, uh, Wow. Hmm. We are 2 hours and 42 minutes. 2 hours and 42 minutes. So we have approximately 15 minutes left to go. Hmm. Now, that's a beautiful Brooklyn church right there. Miller's Crossing. Yes. Yes. The Cohen brothers. Yeah, that's a pretty good one too. And there are several from the 30s that are terrific. Yeah, I mean, particularly the James Cagney ones. Yeah. But yeah, Scarface, that will always be my favorite. Now, since we're in the final home stretch, I want to say, going back to Coppola, that after he did this movie, of course, he and Robert Duvall would do Apocalypse Now, which was a major production headache for him. And after that, he would start branching out and doing other movies that maybe not were his style necessarily. Um, one moment here. But yeah, in the 1970s, of course, he won the Oscar for Patton, but he didn't direct Patton. He also did The Godfather, The Conversation, The Great Gatsby. He wrote the script for The Great Gatsby and Godfather Part 2 and Apocalypse Now. Now, in the 80s, he didn't do a lot of big movies. I mean, he did Peggy Sue Got Married with Kathleen Turner, which Rumblefish and the Outsiders, which were of course based on the S.E. Hinton books, which I'm not really a fan of those movies. He did a musical in 1982 called One from the Heart. And then in 1990, that's when he came back around and did Godfather 3. After that, he would do Bram Stoker's Dracula, which not everybody likes. I actually really dig Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then he also did the movie Jack with Robin Williams, where he played a 10-year-old boy in a 40-year-old body. But I have to say, I'm going to make one more recommendation, and I've made several during this commentary, but I can't help it. My Francis Ford Coppola in 1997, he made what is probably the best John Grisham adaptation, which he adapted himself, co-produced by Michael Douglas. The Rainmaker is a great courtroom thriller, written, produced, and directed by Francis Ford Coppola. It was his very last studio movie. It was the very last studio movie he did. He did it for Paramount Pictures. And like I said, it's a great adaptation of a John Grisham book. And like The Godfather and like The Godfather and Dracula, he would argue to put the author's name above the title, and that's what he did for The Rainmaker. So this is John Grisham's The Rainmaker, but it's a great movie about a young lawyer played by Matt Damon who he needs to pass the bar exam, and he has two clients. He has an elderly lady who wants to give all her money to a preacher, but also he has another case about a kid dying of leukemia, and the family wants to sue the insurance company, who has a bunch of sharks led by John Voight. And Danny Glover plays the judge. I mean, it's just a terrific cast and a terrific movie. Claire Danes, Danny DeVito, just Mickey Rourke. I mean, a great cast, great movie. And here again, underseen and underappreciated. So, but then after The Rainmaker, he then started making these independent films. I have not seen like any of them like Twixt or anything like that, so I can't really comment on them. But look, I mean, whenever Francis Ford Coppola talks, I mean, I'm more than willing to listen because he's a great storyteller and I love his voice. And, I can listen to him in interviews all day. And I should note before the movie concludes that if you want to read the book, there's a terrific audiobook available on Audible, which is read by Joe Mantegna, the great stage and screen actor Joe Mantegna, who was in The Godfather 3, and he's been in a lot of David Mamet films. That is the way to read The Godfather if you were going to go do that. That's a great audiobook, and I will be listening to it again. Um, Probably a couple more times because it is that good. It is that good of a book. Yes, there was a lot that he left in the book, that Coppola left in the book, and I think for good reason. Um, but at the same time, I mean, that is the way I think to go with the book, is to listen to that reading by Joe Mantegna. Sup, Stone? Hey, how you doing, Dying Breed? Well, yeah, we're about in the last 10 minutes of The Godfather here. Yep, 9 minutes to go. We got approximately 9 minutes to go. We're in the home stretch, guys. Finally in the home stretch of The Godfather. Well, in starting to wrap things up, I just want to thank everybody else again for coming in. Dying Breed, Cliff, Rob Gasper, Jamie Hart, and Christian Hannah Horror. You guys are all awesome, and I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming out. And MLB fan 122, thank you so much to you as well for just coming out here. And if you haven't left a thumbs up, I hope you like the commentary enough to give me a thumbs up and uh, put me on the alerts by hitting that bell. The next commentary I will be doing will be on Slaughterhouse 5, based on. I'm so lost right about now. I'm so tired too. After doing this commentary for 3 hours, I mean, it's based on the novel by Kurt Vonnegut. Based on the novel by Kurt Vonnegut, and it's a 1969 science fiction infused anti war novel. Follows the life and experiences of Billy Pilgrim from his early years to his time as an American soldier and chaplain's assistant during World War II to the post war years, with Billy occasionally traveling through time. The text centers on Billy's capture by the German army and his survival of the Allied firebombing of Dresden as a prisoner of war. And the movie was adapted in 1972. Directed by George Roy Hill, who directed Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and The Sting. And it stars Michael Sachs, Ron Liebman, and Ron Liebman just passed away, by the way, and Valerie Perrine, who this is her very first film. Valerie Perrine, who would later, of course, be Lex Luthor's girlfriend in Superman, and of course would also appear in Lenny and Can't Stop the Music. So this was her very first movie, and it won the jury prize and nominated for the Palme d'Or. And yeah, and it also won a Saturn Award for Best Science Fiction Film. So I hope you all can come out to do that. It will probably be next Saturday night. I haven't said it officially yet, but I have to read the Kurt Vonnegut novel beforehand, and then I will watch the movie, and I'll be ready next Saturday night, hopefully, for that audio commentary for Slaughterhouse 5. Yeah. If any of you guys have seen Slaughterhouse 5, please let me know. This is going to be a first-time watch for me, so I'm very curious as to what it's going to be like. Speaking of Joe Mantegna and bringing up The Simpsons again, Joe is the voice of Fat Tony, the leader of the mob in Springfield. Yes! I just read that earlier today, and I neglected to bring it up. That's my fault. But yeah, he's on The Simpsons as the leader of the of the Springfield mob. That's very true. That's very true. But yeah, great audiobook. Great listen. Yeah. And like I said, I listened to about 75% of it, roughly. By the time of Godfather Part 2, oh, believe me, I will have heard it at least a few times. At least a few times. And here we are near the end of the movie where Diane Keaton, yeah, is it? Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, 50 years old, The Godfather. What a magnificent, magnificent movie. Magnificent filmmaking achievement. I mean, arguably. I mean, here again, not a personal favorite, but I don't have a single complaint about it. I mean, it's impossible. I think, and I'm not even saying that because I'm afraid I'm going to be bumped off by the mob or something. No, I'm dead serious. It is a good, it's a damn great movie. And yes, it deserves all of its awards, its entire reputation is well earned and well deserved, and will forever be a classic. Will forever be a classic. Don Corleone. And the door gets shut on Diane Keaton. And that is The Godfather. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Screenplay by Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola. Produced by Albert S. Ruddy, who we all talked about in detail tonight. Starring Marlon Brando and Al Pacino as Michael. Coppola did that on purpose, putting those two actors front and center. Say they were the perfect choices for those roles, and they stood out, obviously. Robert Duvall, Sterling Hayden as Captain McCluskey. Yeah, great cast and a great movie. And while these end credits are going on, I will say that I don't think there should be a Godfather Part 4, although if Paramount wants to do it, they probably will do it. And but I don't think we need a Part 4. I think this is a very 20th century story that doesn't need to be remade or rebooted or redone or sequelized or anything. I just don't think this, look, I don't even consider it a trilogy. I consider it a perfect duo almost. But I mean, all you have to do is look at Godfather Part 3. I mean, and you could say, well, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. I just look. I hate to say it. Paramount will probably do something eventually. I mean, it's going to be, I think, almost inevitable. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it won't happen. Hopefully Paramount will not do it. Hopefully they won't. But who knows? Who knows? But at any rate, so yes, Cliff, a great show. Thanks for the commentary. Absolutely, yeah. Aside from my mistakes, which I think were minimal tonight, but yeah, I think it went rather well. I do think so. Yeah. Hey Rob, that was great, Stone. Sorry it took me so long to join a live stream. Going to catch up on past ones, and we'll be attending future streams. Notifications are on. Take it easy, everyone. Yes, and of course these credits are extended because of the restoration credits by Robert A. Harris, who also worked on Vertigo's restoration. Actually, um, so I already talked about Slaughterhouse Five, but I will be doing another commentary very soon for one of my favorite comedies of all time, Ruthless People, directed by Jim Abrams, David Zucker, and Jerry Zucker, where it stars Danny DeVito and Bette Midler and Helen Slater and Bill Pullman in his very first film. I will be doing that very, very soon. Like I said, turn on those alerts. Special thanks to Gordon Willis and Francis Ford Coppola. Godfather was scanned, digitally restored film, recorded in 4K resolution, scanned on a Spirit 4K, recorded on Airy film recorders. Restoration copyright Paramount Pictures Corporation. This motion picture has been rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America. Well, an organization which is no longer relevant. Just throwing that out there. So yeah, that is the Godfather. The 50 years old. Wow, 50 years old. Yeah, the Godfather is 50. So at any rate, so that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in, and you all have a good night. Thank you so much. Peace.